Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is military affairs, and the US is sending 90 T72 tanks to Ukraine. Well, the general narrative from the pro-Russian commentators is that the Western supply of weapons and other military equipment is slowing down, and that the West has not enough weapons to supply Ukraine. And if they wanted to deliver some of these items, then they have to be manufactured. And basically, that will take a couple of months up to a year and two. Well, it seems to me that these people were wrong. Now, before I even start about this, I would like to talk about, well, not talk about, but just mention that pro-Russian punters should stop talking about the use of 6,000 artillery shells that the Ukrainians are supposed to be using per day. And that whatever stocks are promised by the US will not last, or if they last, it will last maybe a week or 2 weeks. Now, I just want to say that that's a fallacy, sorry to say. Firstly, the Ukrainians have the same artillery pieces than what the Soviet Union had, and the Russians are currently using in Ukraine itself. Yes, the Russians are fielding more advanced systems, but both parties have the same artillery, well, at least some of the same artillery pieces. And these artillery pieces shoot 152 millimeters, which is 3 millimeters less. So they are not compatible with the NATO standard of 155 millimeter artillery. How many the Ukrainians have of these Soviet era type of artillery, we don't know, and it's not made available anywhere. Yes, there are some estimates on what they had before the war, but hell, I don't know about that, how accurate that is. And if you read the daily reports of the Russian Ministry of Defense, then they continuously destroy artillery pieces, they continuously, or every second they basically shoot down Ukrainian fighter aircrafts or bombers, and destroy so many tanks and etc. But the total mentions by the Russian Ministry of Defense is way exceeds the number of that you can get in articles that the Ukrainians had supposed to have had before the war started. So basically, I don't know what to believe anymore, and none of the figures that are available are accurately enough. And in spite of all this, the Ukrainians still field tanks and artillery pieces, and they're still being destroyed by Russia, or reported to be destroyed by Russia. And, well, those numbers just get increasing. But coming back to the artillery piece of the Ukrainians had a lot of ammunition stored in these warehouses. Because when the Soviet Union dissolved, Ukraine before that was one of the fairly large armament manufacturing oblasts or sections of the Russian, of the Soviet Union, and a lot of weapons were stored because they are and were on near the NATO versus Warsaw Pact border. So I believe they have a significant amount of artillery pieces, or not artillery, ammunition available. And if you also consider that in Transnistria, Moldova, there is one of the biggest or the largest weapons caches of the Soviet Union. Yes, I understand that they are old and probably are dangerous to use, but as you can see, they were large, or very large weapon caches in Ukraine. Now, just for the sake, so I read this, just this interesting part. is that when the Americans and NATO allies have provided Ukraine with more than 100 M777 artillery pieces. Yes, I know it's about 120 probably and so on, but I wanted to keep the number nicely in round. But what is quite interesting is that each barrel of this M777 can only fire about 2,500 rounds before it has to be replaced. Now, if you take, say, a like a round number of 100 M777s and you multiply it by the 2,500, you get about 250,000 artillery shells that these supplied artillery pieces can fire. Now, okay, again, according to various reports, the Americans have delivered anything between 800 to 1 million 155mm ammunition to Ukraine since the start of the war. So one has to ask yourself then, what is the conditions of these M777s? Yes. Well, there's no information available, but yes, the Ukrainians are sending some of their military equipment to be refurbished in Poland. Well, did NATO also supply Ukraine with the necessary additional barrels for these M777s? So, you know, this makes this whole story of the 6,000 shells being fired. I don't believe it's all 155s. I believe a huge part of that is the 152s, the Soviet era. And as I've explained many times before, with the amount of counter-battery fire, these systems have to be set up, fire a couple of shots, and then immediately remove to a new position, otherwise it will come under Russian attack and destruction. So, again, there's something wrong with the pro-Russian commentators' narrative. The numbers don't gel. Doesn't always make sense if the new information is made available. So one has to question that. Are there still weapons being sent by the Western powers to Ukraine? And the answer is yes. And that is what I would like to discuss today. Well, in an article on RT and other sources, on November of the 7th, the Western-produced anti-aircraft systems, NASAMS, which I have also talked about, have arrived in Ukraine. And these are the NASAMS are fitted with an aspire surface-to-air missile system. And the Ukrainians thank the Norways, the Spain, and the US for supplying them. And it seems to me Spain is in the loop. And why? It's because Spain is the biggest supplier of these air-to-air missiles, these aspire, because they have bought a huge amount of them in the 1980s. And therefore, they are probably going to supply the missiles for these anti-air defense systems. Now, I've explained many in my previous videos as well. These are fairly big, not big rockets, but they are sophisticated, since they are hanging beneath an aircraft fighter's wing. And they have proper guiding signals or certain guiding systems built into them. And all of them makes it actually very expensive to use. But they are old, and they are basically made available by Spain, who will probably upgrade it to something else. And while the Ukrainians will use it, will they use it to shoot down the smaller drones? That's going to be a debatable point. Maybe the Ukrainians will use it for the bigger missile attacks. I'm not totally sure as well about that. But in any case, according to information, the Americans said that they will deliver about 2 of the proposed 8 systems, that they will be provided and it will arrive in Ukraine in the near future. And it was now confirmed that some of these systems have arrived in Ukraine. So, as you can see, weapons are being delivered. Then an article came out. It said that Ukraine is said to receive about a total of 90 Czech-sourced T-72 tanks. The United States will cover repairs and modernization of 45 of them, and the Netherlands will take part of them. And these tanks are supposed to be arriving in December, and some of them will be arriving next year. Now, 90 tanks is not a small number. If 2 or 3 days tanks are maybe destroyed each day, they will last a significant amount. They are also not T-55s or T-72s. They are T-72 tanks, which is one of the main tanks used by the Russians. And I would assume that these are the upgraded versions. So, in my opinion, the Ukrainians will get a significant boost in terms of their armor. Then also more, the Americans, well, this is all part of a $400 million aid package to Ukraine by the US. And it includes other weapon systems as well. It will basically include the antiquated Hawk air defense missile system. If you look at some of the pictures of the system, it looks a little bit old age. It was introduced in 1960, but like all old weapons, they have all been upgraded at one stage or another. So it's very difficult or dangerous to use the initial date where these systems came into production because they were updated. Now, Washington is apparently sending a few of them to Kiev to see if the stockpile is still in a good shape after spending so many years in storage, which means they're going to first test them, and if the Hawk missile systems are performing or is safe to use, then, well, they will send more. So it's more or less a bit of a wait-and-see game. Now, these systems have been developed by the US arms giant, Raytheon, but they were replaced in the 1990s by the Patriot system, and therefore put to storage. General Jens Stoltenberg also said that the Spain will supply an additional 4 Hawk missile launchers. Again, it's an upgraded or improved variant, and it basically, that system was introduced in 1965. Then also in this package that was announced, they include the maintenance of to about 250 pieces of M117 armored personnel carriers, and also the transfer of about 1,100 Phoenix Ghost loitering ammunition, and 40 armored riverboats. Now, as we have seen, UAVs play a big role in this conflict, and if you see some of the videos of the Russian, what they call it, suicide drones or loitering ammunition UAVs, or how you ever want to call it, and these weapons are quite effective. And in my opinion, fairly dangerous. Well, the Americans are supplying another 1,100 of them. And it is also stated that, up to date, the USA have sent about, you can say $19 billion worth of military hardware to Ukraine. It's a lot less than what we've all been told, that there are about 80 billion spent. But we know all that that's a money laundering type of operation, and most of the money is going back into the US coffers, and some of the money is spent on the to finance the administrative part of Ukraine, the government basically. Help them with additional funds to run the state apparatus. Okay. In any case, so this was all basically announced early October, early November, and so what I would like just to do it is, again, since the narrative is always that the Western nations are running out of equipment, I would like to sort of summarize or read or discuss some of the other deliveries. And we can go back a lot, but how about taking September as a starting point? Now, on the 15th of September, Joe Biden approved the military package. And, well, this package included additional ammunition for the HIMARS, HIMARS rocket system. It seems to be a favorable weapon systems of the Ukrainian army. They're going to supply 33,105mm artillery rounds. Please note, it's 105, not 155. Which indicates that the Ukrainians are using also other artillery pieces. Then this package included, from the 15th of September, 1,000 precision-guided 155mm rounds. And as I've discussed, the 1,000 precision-guided rounds have a much bigger benefit or use than just a normal round that comes an area replacement type of attack. And then America supplied 4 counter-artillery radars and 4 trucks and 8 trailers for the transportation of heavy equipment, Counter-Unmanned Aerial Systems, or what it's worth, I don't know what's that, equipment for demining, Claymore anti-personnel ammunition, demolition munition and equipment, small arms and ammunition, night vision devices, cold weather gear, and an assortment of other equipment. But that was done on the 15th of September. Then on the 28th of September, the Pentagon announced a new $1.1 billion military assistance package for Ukraine, which included 18 additional HIMARS systems. Yes, they also said that it will take several years for delivery, but I don't agree with that. I think what they're going to do is they're going to withdraw some of these systems from existing stock or around the world, and then slowly replace these systems wherever they took it from. So I don't believe it will take that long to get those additional HIMARS into Ukraine. Basically, there's also more rounds or ammunition for the HIMARS that was announced on the 28th. 150 Humvees, 150 tactical vehicles for towing weapons, 40 trucks and 80 trailers for transporting the heavy equipment, 2 radars for UAVs, 20 multipurpose radars, systems for countering UAVs, tactical systems for secure communication and surveillance. Remember, they sometimes have to use the Starlink of Elon Musk system or cell phones, and these can easily be suppressed or hacked or whatever you want to call it, but they can be listened in, which makes them dangerous to use. And again, some explosive disposal equipment, body armor and other equipment. And then naturally they're funding for training and logistical support. So they are still delivering significant hardware, and if you look at, yes, they are going to supply about 150 Humvees, But if you read again, the Russian military defense daily report, then these are probably converted into something very similar we saw in the Middle East, where they put on heavy machine guns onto these trucks and converted them to a high-powered mobile machine on type of scenario. Now, this was done on the 28th of September. That's about less than 2 weeks between each other. And then again on the 4th of October, the US President announced another 625 million military aid package. And this was basically also, again, 4 more HIMARS systems and ammunition, 16 155mm howitzers, that means the artillery piece itself, and 75,000 artillery rounds for them. So those are not small numbers, and it means additional artillery pieces. And again, it includes this time 500 precision-guided 155mm ammunition. Again, the precision-guided versions. 1,000 155mm rounds for remote anti-armor mine systems. That means it basically is it's sort of a cluster ammunition that releases a couple of anti-tank or anti-armor mines. Then there's also going to be a 30,000 120mm mortar rounds, which is just next. It is still an artillery piece, and 120mm is not that small, but it's more for shorter distance, because the howitzers has a minimum and a maximum range, and 120mm mortar has fills that gap basically. Then also again, just remember, it's the 4th of October, less than more or less a week after the previous one. And again, it was promised about 200 Max Pro mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles, or one of them. And then 200,000 rounds of small arms, which is not a much, but I believe it's more like a typo. Obstacle emplacement equipment, I don't know what's that. Claymore anti-personal munition, again, a very important type of, what would you say, booby trap? Or, and then this. The English wording is failing me today. So that's about what was promised on the 4th of October. And then we have on the 15th of October, 10 days later, then Biden announces a 725 million aid package to Ukraine. And again, this included additional ammunition for the HIMARS. This time 23,000 rounds for the 155mm. That means within 10 days, 100,000 155mm rounds were promised. Additional 500 precision rounds for this artillery piece, and another 5,000 of the anti-armor rounds. So it seems to me that they wanted to prevent any armored attack by the Russians. And then, unfortunately, it wasn't specified, about 5,000 anti-tank weapons, whether it were javelins or some other system. That unfortunately wasn't made available, so I don't know. Then there were also some HARMs, high-speed anti-radiation missiles that were delivered. Small arms, to around 2 million of these rounds. Well, small arms means guns, machine guns, plus 2 million rounds. And then some medical supplies. And then we come to the 28th of October, which is more or less 2 weeks later. And then the United States again announced 275 million aid package to Ukraine. And again, like all the other previous one, It had additional ammunition for the HIMARS. Again, 500 precision guided 155. Again, 2,000 of the remote anti-armor mine systems. Another 1,300 anti-armor systems, again, whether javelins or something else, I don't know. Then some more 125 multi-purpose wheeled vehicles. And then again, typically machine guns and ammunition up to about 2,750,000 rounds, 2,750,000 rounds. So again, and then 4 satellite communication antennas. And I thought that would be the last one. Well, it was the last major weapons transfer. But then on the 31st of October, Washington promised that they will supply Ukraine with 8 NASAM systems. And we just been informed that 2 of these systems have basically arrived. Now, as you can see, weapon delivery is not being stopped by the US. If you read other articles and so on, and some Western sites, then they will always tell you that the American military command basically looks at the battlefront and then they determine what Ukraine really needs. Yes, Ukraine may ask for a lot of other weapon systems, they may demand a lot of more of these systems, but at the end of the day, the American military command makes a decision on what the Ukrainians need and what the Americans can afford to give away, and then they pile up the list. So, what I have said also in other videos as well, one shouldn't you underestimate your opponent. And I cannot agree with pro-Russian commentators that most of the people and commanders and generals in the West are idiots or dumb or inexperienced. They cannot think for themselves. No, I don't. No. That's a very dangerous assumption. So if you look at what they provide, the Americans, then one can think this is what the Ukrainians need on the battlefront. And it tells you also what the Ukrainians still have available. So it should give you a good idea what is happening on the battlefront. How many weapons are more or less still available? Now, unfortunately, I am not a military expert, so I don't know what they are, what the requirements are. But what I do understand is that the guys that are on the front, they know what they need. I just want to say something about, there's a thing that sort of, I don't understand, it baffles me a little bit. See, the Germans have delivered, I think, 3 Gepard or Gepard or whatever you want to call them, anti-air defense systems, tanks or whatever you want to call it, system. Basically, it's a gun mounted Leopard 1 type of chassis, and there are 2 35mm guns mounted on it and a radar system. And they are supposed to shoot down drones and the aircrafts and stuff like that. So that is the purpose. Now the Germans have promised them, I think about 30 or so of them. And but there was always a problem with these things. There was no ammunition for them. The Germans couldn't supply the ammunition for this type of system. Basically, they have Oregon guns on it, and they were made by Rheinmetall, But Rheinmetall is owned by Switzerland and the headquarters are in Switzerland. And because Switzerland believes it is still neutral, their constitution and all that prohibits their use or export or permission to allow their weapon systems to be used in a conflict arena. All right. So whatever weapon systems of the Swiss is now in other countries cannot be used or transferred to Ukraine. And when the Germans wanted to deliver the Gepards or Gepards or Gepards to Ukraine, they wanted to supply the ammunition as well. And I think they found some in Netherlands, but they couldn't deliver it because Switzerland said no. And then, for some other reason, the Germans have reapplied for the ammunition to be supplied to Ukraine. And again, Switzerland said no. But 3 of these systems have already been delivered to Ukraine. So what does it mean? Does it mean that these guns were just standing there or probably destroyed by the Russians? Or what did they do? Sorry, I forgot. It wasn't Netherlands that had the ammunition. I think it was Denmark. I always get confused. Denmark, Netherlands, well, I mean, they're all the same. In any case, apparently these Gepards, the 3 Gepards, were delivered to Ukraine, the 3 of them, and they were delivered with several thousands of rounds of ammunition. Now, one has to ask yourself, where does this ammunition come from? Sorry, I'll just read. I just noticed it's not 30 systems, 15 systems were promised by Germany. Well, the Germans couldn't give the ammunition because, firstly, if they had, then it would have been Switzerland. But they didn't have didn't have the ammunition, so they couldn't supply it. So they were asking other people. But according to the information, the problem was solved as an additional manufacturer was procured to supply the Gepards with the ammunition. So somewhere, Germany or Ukraine obtained ammunition from somewhere else. The problem that I see basically is that, as far as I know, is that these are Oerlikon guns, which are also manufactured in Germany. And most of the countries where this system was exported to use these same guns, or they replace them with totally different guns. Now, I'm not, again, an expert on guns and so on. I wouldn't be able to totally tell you precisely what's going on, but, you know, each gun is not using the same ammunition, although they have the same diameter round. And then also what complicates the whole matter is that this is an anti-aircraft, anti-air defense system. And the 35 millimeter round is not a solid piece of metal like you use in normal handguns and so on. They have explosive inside there, and then they have timers inside there, and then they can explode on certain heights or at certain distances. And these heads are usually programmable. So when you source a round from a different supplier, then you have to ask yourself, are they physically compatible with the gun, meaning size, diameter, and tolerances, and length, and so on? That's number one. And number two is you have to ask yourself, how are these rounds programmed? Because what the Polish people have done is they have developed their own gun systems, and these rounds are basically programmed as soon as they leave the barrel. Now, this is an electronic version, and I'm sure that the Willikin system works on totally different principles and where they are programmed or not. So I'm still not sure where they got the ammunition for these spare parts from. Well, they mentioned Germany. No, Germany didn't have any information. You can look at South Africa. Yes, South Africa have them, but they have the same guns and they have the same ammunition supplied by Switzerland. Canada exported. Japan, same problem. Turkey, I'm not totally sure. And Poland have they totally put in their own systems, so the guns and ammunition, in my opinion, shouldn't be compatible. So, where did they get the ammunition from? And yes, the system has been exported to about 35 countries. And apparently some of the ammunition is made by a Norwegian company called Nammo. And I'm not totally sure if that's correct. And then apparently another article said that Brazil supplied this ammunition. But again, you know, looking at the political side of that, was Brazil not neutral and decided not to deliver weapons to Ukraine? And were they not sort of neutral in this position? And are they not part of the BRICS countries? And how would it look politically wise if Brazil supplied the ammunition to kill Russians when they are part of the BRICS countries? And you know what I'm actually meaning? And again, if you look a little bit further, they are still the Willikin guns. So compatibility is still a problem. And then one has to ask the question is, why did the Germans re-request permission? First time they applied and Switzerland said no, and now they have reapplied for that. Now, if you had different sources for the ammunition, then, well, you didn't need to re-request it. So, it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm still wondering about this whole story about the German anti-air defense system, or air defense system. Now, sorry, in Afrikaans you say a little bit differently. So I'm constantly translating into English, and then it doesn't always sound right. In any case, I hope that was interesting. I believe the pro-Russian punters should start slowly to change their narrative. Weapons are still flowing. 90 tanks is not a small amount. The data that's provided by the Russian military defense makes no sense to me anymore. So I would put a huge question mark about this whole story. So that's my story for today. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends, spread the words. And until next time, cheers.